So, welcome back to Hearts. And today I'm really grateful and honoured to have Deborah Williams with me, who is an amazing cranio-sacral therapist. And she has many, many years of wisdom to share with us about her journey and what she has found useful and helpful along the way. And Deborah, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about who you are, so that everybody can get to know you and what an amazing being you are.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. Gosh, yeah, my name's Deborah, and I have been on a long journey to get to this point, as we all have, actually. It is a journey, isn't it, this life? And I call myself a slow learner because the thing that started me on my spiritual journey was at 19, I learned transcendental meditation. I was just really drawn to doing it, and I found it really useful. People commented on how I was really nice and calm. So after that, and that became a part of my integral daily practice. And then, like, fast forward to now, and I'm in my 60s, and um, I'm a cranio-sacral therapist, having left the corporate world behind me, and that took me a while. And I work from my home clinic, and along the way, from the trends, and this is, I'm just a brief synopsis here. You
Yeah.
can ask me questions, like, if anything kind of catches your interest. Um, so from the transcendental meditation, then I got into yoga, and the yoga remains a very important part of my life. The wholeness of yoga, which is mostly about meditation and not so much about the postures for me. And and then I landed on Waiheke for a while, for 10 years. And whilst I was there on Waiheke Island, I learned Reiki and went right through the whole process of becoming a Reiki master, and did some shamanic training, explored my own. There was some magic and miracles that occurred, I guess you could say, that triggered me. I I was told that I had a facility for, or that I could certainly do astrology, and that was something that really interests me. And I call myself a very amateur astrologer. Um, I find it helped me to explain myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very effective tool for that, for when you kind of don't understand what's going on, and you feel like those feelings sometimes that can come up within us, and we're like, why do I feel like this? What is going on? Like, when you can't find an outside reason, often it's something like a major transit planet is really triggering you. And that's just really reassuring, because then you can go, okay, so I know that this will pass.
Yeah.
And I can get through this, and I just need to remember it's not me. Things will be okay. Um, I kind of call myself semi-retired now, because I just work from my home clinic, and I just work with a very easy flow from day to day with what comes and goes. And I do consider that my life at this phase of my life is very much dedicated to spirit,
Mhm.
to raising consciousness and working for the good of all. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Mm. Well, I think that's true. When I think about how you've come into my life and how I see the work you do, it's very much about sitting in that loving heart space and opening yourself to assist others. And it's really interesting, isn't it, when we get to know people and we get to know them as a person before we get to know them in any of their outside capacity. I think that was one of the things with COVID.
Yeah.
Suddenly I was in these relationships with people that were forming out of a completely different place. And so I was getting to know people from who they were showing up as, not what they did for a living or how we knew mutual friends or anything like that. So yeah, it's been lovely to get to know you that way as
Thank
well.
you.
And
Yeah.
of course, I've come and had treatments with you, and I think that is amazing. I love what you do.
Thank
You
you.
have a very nurturing space. You hold a very nurturing space.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that's really integral to what's needed in this world at the moment, is having a safe place where our bodies can heal, whether that be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And yeah, that's the kind of main ingredient that I work to create for all of my clients, is that sense of safety, because our bodies are amazing and will heal when given the right space and the informed touch, which is, I think, what you do as well. Absolutely. It's like that informed touch with compassionate holding.
Yeah.
And I think our bodies just soak that up, love it.
Yeah.
And then that's where the magic happens. I always say I'm actually not doing anything. I'm not really doing anything. I'm just witnessing. I'm witnessing magic occur.
Yeah. Well, the magic definitely occurs.
It
Tell
does.
us a little bit about your corporate, like what that was like, because obviously it's a very different world to what you're living in now.
Yeah.
How did that all come about, and you know, what strengths and blessings did you take from that?
Well, it's a kind of a yeah. It was good. It was a blessing. I fell into it. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. That's why I say I'm a slow learner. It really took me until I was in my late 40s, early 50s to realize, oh, okay, I am meant to be a healer. So I I started off working as a legal secretary, and that was so boring. And then answered an ad to be a secretary in an advertising agency, and I didn't even know what advertising was. Had no idea, really. So, but it looked very exciting when I went for the interview. I was like, "Oh, this is a cool place." And yeah, so that was from the 70s. And so I had lots of fun, and very rapidly kind of got offered, from doing the secretarial work, was offered to train up in the media department, doing planning, buying television, radio, blah blah, all that kind of thing. And very fast paced environment, high pressure. We worked hard and we played hard. And
I'm imagining Mad Men.
yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, honestly, I look back on those times now and myself, and it's kind of embarrassing, because I think I was like a geeky kid in school, and I definitely wasn't one of the cool kids. I wasn't in with the in crowd. And all of a sudden, here I was with the cool kids in this environment. And I think my ego did definitely get a bit out of control. So, yeah. Anyway, I did have lots of fun. But I kept through that. So that was basically my main means of income for a good 20 or so years. But I kept pulling out of it. There was something that didn't feel right, and I would try to do something else, but I always went back because of the money.
Yeah.
Because the money's so good.
Mm.
And that was, you know, it kind of had me. The money was the pull, until finally there was a point when I'd moved off Waiheke Island with my daughter, who was ready for high school, and I was doing contract work with an agency in Auckland whilst I was doing my training to become a cranio-sacral therapist. And I was sitting in a meeting one day with this particular client who had like massive $1 million budgets, and they were discussing how we could market this whole particular product more to what, you know, the demographic was household shoppers with children, so that they would buy this product for their children. And it was a food product. And I was like sitting in that meeting, and it was literally like there was kind of this voice in my head going, you wouldn't even feed this to your own child. Hello? And I was like, yeah, I know. And I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. And it was, I had to go. That was it. I tried to hang on, actually, to be honest. I did try to hang in there because I was scared that I wouldn't survive without the money. My daughter was in high school. She, you know, teenagers are expensive. And it was a scary time, but, you know, here I am, I survived. So, yeah.
It's a really, yeah, it touches on something really important, I think, about that there's some kind of trigger, isn't there? I mean, I think it happens often in life, but there are times where your integrity is so in question, you know, like you're kind of teetering on the edge of like, I'm just being pushed into the space of having to say, okay, no, like that's my line, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and often it seems to be our conscience that allows us to see things from a different perspective and step back and then make a decision. I mean, we don't always make the decision that we might have done in an ideal world, but we make the decision that's right for us at the time with what we know. And so it sounds like you went through that a few times.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, you know, which was why for many, many, many years I kept going back into advertising, you know. And I do think the universe gives us, it kind of challenges us when we make a decision and we go, okay, I'm going to follow this path now. And then it kind of goes, are you sure? Yeah. Are you sure this is really what you want to do? And are you really committed to this? And I did. I got pulled sideways by the money several times before I got to that point where I really couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. But you did. You did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was stepping into the world of cranio-sacral, like how did you get there? You know, like, I mean, you said that you'd already kind of done your Reiki by that stage, is that right?
Yes. I'd attained the Reiki master's degree whilst I was living on Waiheke. And I've suffered on and off throughout my life. You know, this is my own personal healing journey from migraines. Yep. And I had a particularly bad migraine one day, and I'd heard this. So I was in Auckland by this time, and I'd heard about biodynamic cranio-sacral therapy, and had been considering that could be, you know, because I was always looking for what else could I do. And so anyway, I went to see, it rang up on the off chance that this particular cranio-sacral therapist could see me on a day when I was, you know, in the midst of a pretty bad migraine. And they were able to see me. So I got in my car and drove there. I don't know how I did that because normally I can't move. And literally crawled in to the clinic, had an amazing session, and walked out feeling like a different person. And I thought, what just happened? Yeah. And so from there, I thought, okay, I'm going to sign up to do this work. And there was a 1-day introductory kind of workshop that I could attend to see if it was what I wanted to do. And during that 1-day introductory workshop, we got a chance to be guided through just, okay, so this is how we do it, and let's just all practice putting our hands on and holding the space. And during that moment when I had my hands, I was cradling somebody's head in my hands, and I literally felt like I was flooded with light, and it was really clear and incredibly uplifting. I mean, that's the lovely thing about me for this work as well, and I'm sure you find that too, Sarah, is I really, there's no effort on my part. I don't feel like I'm actually doing it at all. It's coming through me, and that's what that felt like. And I thought, this is what I'm going to be doing now.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yeah.
And so how long is it, because it's a fairly extensive training, isn't it, the cranio-osteopathy?
Yeah, well, it's derived from osteopathy, so it's we don't call it cranial osteopathy. A cranial osteopath is someone who's trained fully as an osteopath and got a degree in osteopathy, and then they've carried on and done some further work with the cranio-sacral side of things, which is the more subtle side, where there's no manipulations, we don't push pull, we don't apply any pressure at all with biodynamic cranio-sacral therapy. So the training that I did was a 2-year training. We would have a 5-day seminar once every 2 months, and then in between each of those seminars we would have homework, and we had to get our hands on as many people as possible. We had to do, I'm just trying to think now, was it like in the 2 years of the training we had to do something like 150 write-ups of our hands-on experiences. So after you'd seen each practice client, and we weren't allowed to charge obviously at all during our training, and then we also did loads of anatomy and physiology, lots and lots of embryology, because it's biodynamic cranio-sacral therapy is based on the premise that how we develop from conception in the womb has got a lot to do with how our bodies express in our whole life. And it's fascinating. So I just loved every minute of it and became a total anatomy geek, and graduated in 2012 or 2011 it was actually, and started jumped straight into. I was very lucky that through a friend of mine whose partner was at the time working at a very enlightened dental practice in Auckland, and they were interested in, they were working a lot with kids who have problems with their teeth, and so they were working with them with plates and braces. To a lot of what the issue is as I have, and that was for me, that was so totally fascinating, a narrow jaw, because I was a mouth breather as a child and I had asthma, which I completely grew out of. And so I have a very narrow jaw. And so when I came to my teenage years, I had 4 teeth, like the second teeth removed, and the remaining baby teeth, and braces. which was then the standard treatment, and now it's not so much.
Yeah.
So now what a lot of the dentists and orthodontists are doing is they're putting the plates in to widen the palate and teaching kids strategies for nose breathing, helping them with their whole health, basically. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it, I think, with our health.
Yeah.
You can't just...
Well, that's it. You've got to go in at every angle. I don't know if you've ever come across a dentist who, I mean, this is years ago now. His name was Dr. Brendan Stark. He wasn't in New Zealand. He was a Canadian dentist, but he did all this incredible work with people who had Parkinson's, and basically he was working through the TMJ. He was seeing TMJ dysfunction as being incredibly important for muscular spasm, the shakes, all of these things that were presenting in people, and like really bad torticollis.
Yes.
And so what he would do is he would get them in, he would assess their jaw, he would put in like the tongue depressors, he'd like layer them and put them in and see what happened. And some of the video is amazing of just building up these kind of, these building up the jaw, the bite with these tongue depressors, and seeing how the muscles responded. And I always find that really interesting, because I think with the kind of work that you do and some of the work that I do, we're working really in the same general area. And the jaw seems to be really important, but it seems also to be one of those places that people don't have a whole lot of awareness about. And watching this stuff really made me think, well, I mean, apart from anything else, I think anyone who's got issues should definitely try and find people who can work through the TMJ a little bit. But even that release through the trigeminal nerve and the, around the back of the head, just like, I think that's one of the things that I love about seeing you is you hold the head, and it really is like a safe feeling of being able to just completely give yourself over to the experience, and somehow the body responds. So I know it's quite, they're two quite different things, but it's just interesting because that dentistry bit, that thing about working with the teeth and all of this information that's going on through the jaw and through the central nervous system, it's a nice combination that you came into that.
It was. And once again, that was something that I just fell into. It was really interesting because when we do the training for biodynamic craniosacral therapy, there is one module where we're looking, because we look at different aspects with each module, obviously, and then there was one module where we're looking specifically around the jaw and the face, and the trigeminal nerve, the facial nerves, all of that stuff. And we literally get like maybe half a day where we look at working with the T&J and doing craniosacral work in the mouth. And a lot of people don't like that module, and I was not that fussed on it, to be honest, and never thought, like most people, there's a certain amount of reluctance to go to the dentist, but you do it because you have to, and all of that kind of thing. Never imagined I would end up working with people with TMJ and dental kind of relief, but I did, and I love it now. It's like it's amazing, because when you think about the anatomy, and there's all that whole thing about as above, so below, and that works with our bodies as well. So it's like the T&J is a pivotal, literally, joint, like in terms of the whole function of our whole body, because, as you know, through the connective tissue, it affects everything. And so many people unconsciously clench.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's a sympathetic nervous system response, actually. And that's one of the things in one of my presentations. And I put there was just a little video of Brad Pitt, and you can see his muscles working in his here.
Mm-hmm.
He's a clencher. He's a total clencher. And that's what gives so many men that, that chiseled jaw that we all like so much, is because they're ready for action. They're tensing all the time, and it's actually not good.
No.
Makes for the jaw to look nice and strong, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, like you said, the as above, so below. Have you seen the photos of the anatomy of the mouth throat, and then the anatomy of especially with women, the womb and the cervix opening?
Yes.
And how they're just
Yeah.
basically in the same the same structure and form, and then also the reciprocity between the jaw and the pelvis.
Yeah.
Your two main joint, two biggest joints, really.
Yeah.
And
if
one's locked up, the other's locked up.
You would have seen that so much in your career as a midwife with, women who are like resisting or kind of clenching, or kind of, if there's, they're holding too much tension here, it's really hard for everything to release while they're birthing if they're holding up here.
Yeah. I don't think I was so aware of it as a midwife. I mean, there's so much going on. But yeah, I mean, I did see some interesting, there was some interesting births where the woman would not allow the baby to be born, at a really crucial kind of crowning point.
Yeah.
You have to let go, and it's like they're not, and it's that nerve-wracking, like you can hold that for a while, but there is a point where you've got to let that baby out.
Yeah.
And that is a real releasing and surrendering thing.
Yeah.
So it's the very opposite. And and I don't know if you know Ina May Gaskin, who's she had this beautiful book that I lent to somebody, never got back. But she would talk about when people were going into that second stage of labor, really the bearing down and the opening up. And she would say, like in transition time, where people are really starting to lose the plot, losing the will, and feeling unable to continue.
Yeah.
And the body has beautiful responses to that. It slows everything down. It gives you a break and a pause. But she would say one of the best things you could do in that moment is to have a deep, long, passionate kiss with your partner, because it opened everything up.
Yeah.
It was pretty hard to convince people. I convinced a couple of people.
Right.
But really, just because, the whole process is about surrendering and opening up and letting the love come. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing to be able to refocus, what is happening here, because when you're in a hospital situation or a clinical situation, that the whole focus is about the anatomy and the physiology of what's going on. And there is so little mind paid to the spiritual aspect and the very human aspect of bringing a whole being into the world.
Yeah. And I think, over the short span of time that humanity's had allopathic medicine, we've really lost that sense of trust in our bodies. It's almost like we've handed our bodies over. We're living this, and this for me was actually an integral part of my journey with biodynamic cranio-sacral therapy, was becoming fully embodied. And being in my body making friends with my body for the first time, really, even though I'd been doing yoga for years, but there was still a bit of a battle going on. And I think that's how a lot of people, it's like when they get sick, they get impatient and fed up and, and like, oh, I haven't got time for this. Whereas in actual fact, any time we get sick, our body is asking us to take a break, to slow down, to rest, and then the body will do its job and we will heal. But often we completely ignore it and just carry on that whole soldier on thing.
I love that saying, and I'm going to get it wrong now, but if you don't take time for your health, your sickness will make time for you.
Yeah.
And that's so true. If you keep trying to push through, eventually you'll get, if you don't listen to the messages, they're going to come through and bang you over the head with a brick.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what often, people say when, one of the things I love about the work that I'm doing is because you get some lovely conversations afterwards when, people are just, because I never like to rush people off the table. And then sometimes they'll connect the dots, and see how there was a previous time when something similar or a lesser version of what they're suffering from right now raised itself, but they ignored it or they didn't. And then, so I love that when they connect the dots like that. It's great.
Yeah, and actually that brings me around to the astrology aspect, because as we were talking about like transits and cycles and things in our own personal journey through the world, if we we're a little star, we'd be doing all those things too. We are little stars.
We are.
But yeah, that thing of at the moment, I mean, I'm not up on the astrology in a big way, but I know that there's been a kite with all of these amazing sextiles in play, where we're actually in this energy at the moment of having, it's like having all of the challenges that we've faced in our lifetimes coming to the surface for one last look at and resolve. Now that's probably not true for everybody. There's probably, and I'm never sure about whether you ever get one last look at anything. But it does feel like very much there's a lot coming to the surface all at once, and people are really having to make peace, because there's so many of us who have been doing that work for such a long time, and that's like, oh, here it is again, here it comes again.
Yeah.
But it does feel at the moment, doesn't it, that there's just so much coming to the surface. If you look into the outside world, it's pretty startling today, at least.
Yes, it is. And I think, yes, you're right, there is a lot in terms of transits going on at the moment, and it's like a lot of my kind of friends who are also have a similar interest and dabble in astrology, and there's a few serious astrologers that I do follow whose work is amazing. And what I understand, this is all playing out as it needs to play out, obviously, for humanity, and it's going to continue to be challenging. It's like some people have been saying to me, "Oh, when is it going to be over?" It seems like the astrology is constantly being challenging, and we don't get much respite. And that's just the times that we're in. But one of my very esteemed astrologers that I follow online said that he's looked ahead. So we've got another couple of years through to about 2027, where there's going to be these challenges that are going to affect all of us. And then after that, and he said he's looked ahead like about 20 years from that, and he said it all looks pretty sweet. It's like this, so we've just got to get through this next couple of years, and for me, how I choose to do that, how I am choosing to do that, and honestly, I'm challenged all the time, and whew, you know, I have days where I definitely do not uh, live up to my personal best. um, but I think the whole process of surrender, this is something I'm learning as I get older. What I notice is, you know, and this relates to that whole thing of like when you're feeling unwell, and yes, I'm at that phase of my life now where I can, you know, if I don't feel 100%, I don't have to work. And I'm very grateful that I'm at that phase in my life. But is to not force things. You know, it's like it's not a matter of pushing through, it's a matter of, for me anyway, surrendering through, like asking myself over and over again, how can I maintain my peace and still lead with my heart in a world which seems to have completely lost all sense of compassion. I mean, and you know, not entirely, but you know, all the wars that are going on and all of the, you know, crazy politics and the everything. There's a lot that we could become very disturbed about, and I still do on a regular basis. And then I just have to remind myself, you know, like you know, we have this lovely network of friends and like-minded people that's ever expanding as we kind of connect with this, you know, the mycelium of of change.
Yeah.
And and I do ultimately believe that love will win. And it's not just a belief, actually, it's a deep, deep knowing that
Mm.
love will win.
Yeah, I agree. I feel love has
Mm,
won. It's just,
yes.
you know, if you don't want to sit in love and accept it and, you know, surrender to it, then
Mm,
you'll keep getting a little bit more until you're pushed to the
yeah.
edge again. You know,
Yeah.
that thing of, you know, if you what do you really want? And I think that's a really big concept too. I was thinking recently about why, you know, why have some of us come along in this last, say, the last 4 years, you know, when we talk about, you know, when we look at this astrological cycles and how things will repeat, um, in the last 4 years, there's been a massive shift, like
Mm,
just enormous. And for some of us, that has been an enormously positive shift. And
yeah.
then there's for other people, it just looks like things are getting worse and worse. And yeah, I always kind of think, well, you know, why is it that some of us are getting to have this different experience? But it truthfully seems to be about what's our purpose, what's our journey supposed to look like, because all of the challenges are the great lessons,
Yeah.
and they are the things that you can then help heal with others.
Mm.
But yeah, it, it does look pretty grim. Looks pretty grim out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been working on pretty intensively this year is that's been very helpful for me is I've only just recently really come into an awareness of the power, the incredible power of love. I mean, yeah, I've always known. My mother, bless her cotton socks, she's 96 years old and living in a rest home now, and she's got dementia, and she thinks I'm my daughter, and that's fine. She knows that I'm someone that she loves, and she always said to me when I was a teenager and going through the teenagey stuff, and I remember her distinctly, her saying to me in one of our little heart to hearts that love is all that matters in this world. And so I often tell her that when I go to visit her, even, you know, kind of, I know it gets in. And I just remind her and I thank her and I say, thank you, Mum, for teaching me that. And I just want you to know that I am carrying that forward.
Yeah.
You know, and I think sort of on a deeper level to that, what I've been specifically working with this year is that love is where our power lies, and that's where the miracles come from. And we are, all of us, more powerful than we know, because we've had a couple of thousand years of being completely gaslit about our direct connection with Source. And we've forgotten, and we think that we're these blemished, poor little human beings who have absolutely no agency in our lives, but actually we have a lot of agency. We've just forgotten how to connect in with the Source that delivers that level of energy to us so that we can live from that place.
Yeah.
And it can feel a little bit overwhelming, and there's that whole thing of, aren't you getting a bit too big for your boots? Like, and it's the stuff that gets misquoted, when, John Lennon, said, like, when they were like, oh, he thinks he's Jesus, or he thinks he's the Christ,
bigger than Jesus.
Bigger than Jesus. Yeah, that whole thing, but when you look at it from a perspective of the energy and power that we all carry within us, you could say in terms of his reach to humanity, at the time he was bigger than Jesus.
Especially at that time, and maybe by design. And that's a really interesting thing, because when we talk about the fact that we're made to feel so small and so helpless, more and more when I look outside at how they are bombarding people who watch the TV or listen to the radio with all this dreadful stuff. I mean, there is very dreadful stuff going on in the world, and but the fact that they spend so much time and money making sure that we see that 24/7, making sure that we feel it, the money that they spend spraying stuff in the skies, trying to poison the food, fluoridating our water. Like, there's a lot of energy, a lot of time and money that goes into trying to keep us away from our power and our our wealth, and they still can't do it. They're still not doing it, it's a good bloody distraction. It's really freaking annoying me that I have to spend any more of my life dealing with that distraction, because it is such a waste of my time. But that's coming from a place where I've realized that I am just in the presence of these incredible human powerhouses. And every single person here, and every animal, every tree, all these beings are absolutely powerful and cannot be contained. And so, I think for people who are stepping into this awareness of being gaslit, and stepping into this awareness of having a connection within that cannot be destroyed. I think there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of things that make us doubt our connection and say, well, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Because we're always taught it's a bad thing. And then anything that shows up that we're not sure of, we'll say, oh, that's scary, I don't know what that is. Well, it's all coming from here. Like, there might be outside forces participating and manifesting that for us. But I mean, I think it should be very reassuring for people who are just starting to see through the cracks that there is so much time and effort put into trying to keep you away from who you are, that you must be so frigging awesome. And I know you are. She knows you are.
Yeah, I had a comment there, but it's gone. But yeah, basically all of that.
Yeah.
Just, I think just trust yourself, because that's the other thing I think a lot of us have, been taught that we can't even trust our own inner knowing,
Yeah.
our own sense of, and that's that. But basically, that's all that guides my life now. And ask. I ask if I don't know and I'm feeling confused, or I will literally just sit down and ask for help.
Yeah.
Just ask for help. Just say, don't know what to do. I'm struggling here. Give me a hand. Whatever that, wherever you feel the support comes from for you,
Mm.
and there's no special label. It's like whatever works.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I remember when my son was at high school and he wasn't really attending, and
Mm,
just that whole period of time where I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't physically do anything about this. I can't manipulate him. He's too smart. He knows exactly what he's got. He knows exactly what what my limitations are. And I used to come in here and sit down and meditate, and I would do that. I would say, please, to whoever's listening that works for the highest good of me and my family, please, can you do something, because I don't know what else to do. And often I would go inside, and a couple of hours later there'd be a phone call for him, or something would come through. Now that didn't mean that I could completely take my hands off. Often that was like the culmination of efforts I'd put in earlier. It might be a phone call from a place that I had contacted about him. But, really to throw your hands up and say, I need some help.
mm.
And then to let go of how it's going to come, what it will look like as well. But it's such
Yeah,
a good point.
yeah. Ask. Always ask. I'm getting better at doing that, because we don't have to struggle along alone. Yeah,
Yeah. It's hard to remember though, isn't it? You
yeah,
really sometimes have to be in that completely helpless place before you remember that you're allowed to ask.
yeah,
And also, I think for a lot of people, say, if we're talking about the power of our ability to connect with source and our ability to choose for ourselves what we will and won't accept, we also need to know what we want. And I think
mm,
there must be a good 80% of the world out there who's got no idea about
yeah.
what they really, really want.
I agree. I didn't know what I wanted either. Had
No.
no idea. Took me ages. That's why I said I'm a slow learner. Took me ages. I'm so glad I kind of got there, and then I'm just having this amazing journey, kind of just following my heart. And the exciting thing is, I just feel like I'm entering this whole amazing new phase in my 60s, where I'm so looking forward to this latter phase of my life, because I feel like I've finally got a handle on myself, and my place in the world. And as I said, and I'm ready to do the work, and surrender myself to the work that needs to be done, because I'm really clear now that when I'm in service to the whole, I'm in service to myself.
Mm.
And, which is interesting, because, I have family, I have a daughter, and I have grandchildren, and, you know, um, but even to the extent of, having a broader focus than that. And that's my work, and that encompasses my family as well, obviously. But and it's exciting to think of all the adventures. I had an amazing adventure last year. I ended up in the south of France and meeting some amazing people and having some very magical experiences, which, if you'd asked me like a year prior to that, if I was going to be doing that, I would have said no. But it all just unfolded, and it happened, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's going to be more
Mm.
adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I can say that I could be a witness to that because I had met you prior to that.
yeah, yeah.
And, and we all were brought together by the horrendous lockdowns and all the things that we didn't agree with.
Mm,
And we found this beautiful community of people. And even in the time that we were still licking our wounds and sharing our trauma with one another, we were already in the process of building something better.
yeah, and I
And
guess
very
that's
quickly, everyone moved into that.
yeah, and that's the thing for me is I think what we need, because I had some friends saying to me, "Oh, are you sure you want to travel, and is it safe and all of that kind of thing?" And I was really clear, yes, because things have unfolded so magically and easily for me to take this trip with everything just falling into perfect alignment. Of
Mm.
course I'm going. It's really clear to me that I'm meant to go. And I think we need to um, surrender to that, to the journey, and trust in that intuitive pull. Yeah,
Yeah, like you said, where your heart pulls you, you know that you need to follow.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was before we started recording, but that was a very lovely thing you
Right. Yeah,
said. But
yeah.
I mean, I think when I look at you and some of the other people that have come into my life in the last 3 or 4 years, I can see how we were stuck in this situation that we didn't want. We disagreed with it,
Mm,
moved out of that disagreement to find people we could be in agreement with. And then it was like this overflowing available adventure to be had. And
yeah.
we've had, and I feel like my life has been full of adventure in that same time. Like even now with the puppy, and I'm not going as far or for as long.
Uh,
But even so, I had the trip to Australia.
yeah,
We went on that beautiful journey down to Castle Hill in March.
yeah. That was amazing.
But yeah, just kind of, I don't know, honoring and acknowledging the amazing places that we have right on our doorstep.
Absolutely.
And
And I
the
think what we're doing where we are creating, because we're all creating our own reality anyway, and there's like that whole thing of consensus reality. And there's a significant bunch of us now who are creating a completely different consensus reality.
Mm,
And I think eventually that's going to override the old paradigm. That's what I'm focused on anyway. And I mean, I know what reality I want to live in.
yeah, and when you said
Yeah,
about the mycelium network,
yeah.
that's what I feel. Um, we've There's been so many groups of people who have come from that same space, and suddenly, all of a sudden, it feels like we're all connecting up. All these
Mm,
different groups are connecting up.
mm,
And yeah, so what was feeling very isolated and silo-like is
mm,
now suddenly very connected in with one another.
yeah.
You can see the old structures falling around. I mean, I really feel like part of the process of even doing the heart to hearts is about creating that network in a way that it can join in with the others, like the PHA, all that stuff. But because I
Yeah.
feel like our health system is, I mean, did you see that they've got a petition out? There's a petition asking for everyone to sign up to save the health system.
Wow.
And I don't want to sign it.
No.
There's nothing that could, you could not pay me to
Mm,
sign that petition because I don't want to save that system.
no.
I want that system to go. And I know that something better is already in the offing
Yeah.
because I get to talk to people like you all the time, as you can see.
Yeah.
There's real healthcare, there's
Yes.
real awareness of what it takes to be a wealthy, healthy individual, and it does not exist in these huge buildings with
Yeah.
people who can't be themselves and can't offer their wisdom and
Mm,
have to, do what's being mandated by some
mm,
outside force.
yeah,
Mm.
I agree.
Yay, I feel I feel really excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. And I just wanted to say that, yeah, that time that we had down at Castle Hill that was one of those heart immediate, like when you first mentioned it, I was like, yep, I'm going. It was just, yep, no doubt in my mind. And I met some amazing people that I hadn't met before down there. And then that's led to some new connections
Mm.
for me. And there's another workshop I'm going to in November where I'm going to meet some of them again and get to play with them and have some fun. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I know that there's going to be some more repercussions to that where it's just we all keep deepening into our knowledge and wisdom, our connectedness, and stoke those fires of love in our hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that was a significant time for me too.
yeah,
And hopefully I get to talk to some of those people on the future Heart to Hearts.
yes, yeah,
I've asked. I haven't had any confirmations yet, but it's okay. I've got a fair few people lined up.
great.
And initially I had thought that this would be just me talking to healers and people who could help other people within New Zealand, because I
Hmm.
feel like New Zealand has so much going on that is often unseen.
Mm,
Um, but then I realized, you know what? We are not limited to what's local to us anymore. We have this internet. We can
yeah,
do anything with it. So actually, why not just find the people who
yeah,
get drawn in?
absolutely. And I just felt the impulse to say, when you said you've reached out to some of those people who were down at Castle Hill and you haven't heard back from them yet. And I just want to point out that, and this is where, like I said, I've been working with this whole thing about how we are all more powerful than we know. Because my first response when you reached out to me and asked me to do this was, oh, little old me, what have I got to offer?
Mm,
And then I corrected myself and I went, no, Deb, you don't know what you might have to say that just might spark something, and you will never know how that has affected somebody.
yeah,
And the ripple effects of this conversation, we may never know what they are. And that's totally okay with me. But I know that in doing this work and in holding true to ourselves and our hearts, that it's important. And it's important to be seen. And I think a lot of us, one of the hugest struggles I've had this year was letting go of ancient, you can call it past life, parallel life, whatever, old fears around being seen, you know, for fear of being burned at the stake or whatever. Like just yeah. So that was because I did one of my struggles with my work has always been I've not been great at doing my own marketing or kind of putting myself out there, and I just let people come to me. And I'm happy with that now. I'm kind of beyond the stage of it that I can't be bothered doing any marketing, but I realized that a lot of what was holding me back and has held me back my whole life was that fear of being seen, of sticking my head up above, the good old New Zealand tall poppy syndrome.
mm,
Um, because people will try and cut you down,
yeah.
and that hurts.
It does, and it's such a wound for so many of us.
Yeah.
And for me, I think I have to pay tribute to Narita McInnes, in Australia who had me on her podcast, and I had the same exact reaction, like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
want to talk to me? And I think what I have understood in watching people like Nerida is that, and I knew this myself, but I actually find people fascinating.
Yeah.
I find that everybody has something to share and give to someone else. We're constantly dropping little keys into other people's, life, and they do it to us. And so we, as much as we have to go inward to find our own answers and to create our own reality, we're not supposed to do that all by ourselves.
Mm.
And the most amazing, astounding people that you meet often are the ones that you would never see on a screen.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are quietly just doing their thing.
Yeah.
And more and more, they're the only kind of people I want to talk to.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to big wig, fancy pants people. They don't want to talk to me. We've got nothing in common.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's not true. Some of them will have
No, some
plenty
of
in
them are
common.
amazing. Some of them are amazing. And there are some, big, kind of people who have definitely more of a profile online or whatever who are doing amazing work. But there's also a lot of people who have no profile at all who are doing amazing work that will
Yeah.
remain unsung heroes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a big thing to be the person that chooses to speak up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that was why I did, I pushed myself to do this because I was a little bit scared, it's this whole journey of love has hugely been for me learning to love myself. And I think that's what it is for all of us, really. I think once we're like, I'm so much more solid in my love for myself now, and that just spills over into everybody else I come into contact with. So,
Yeah.
there are some people I struggle to love on the world, stage, I have to say.
Well, love's not easy.
No.
It's powerful, but
It's
it's not
powerful.
necessarily easy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I then just want to honor that and say thank you so much from my heart to yours for being brave. You are doing an amazing job in everything that you are. And I will be happy to share all of your details about how people can contact you.
Okay.
And yeah, is there anything else that you want to leave people with?
Just, I think, is trust your heart. Trust
Yeah.
your heart.
That's beautiful. Well,
Mm,
thank you, Deb.
thank
And
you.
I so look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay.